It's very likely that Australian companies will be required to report more stringently on their sustainability and climate risks. In 2021, Glasgow hosted the 26th UN Climate Change Conference of the Parties, better known as COP26. At the conference, the International Sustainability Standards Board, or ISSB, was formed. Its role is to provide standards to improve the trust and confidence in company disclosures about sustainability. In June this year, two international financial reporting standards, known as IFRS S1 and S2, were created. Damien Lambert, Head of Sustainability Services at Mazars, explains the rationale behind these accounting standards to Chris Ashmore.
And so the main idea is, when you're measuring the financial performance of a company, you are using accounting standards. So a way to compare the performance of companies across the world, one company in the US versus one in Australia or in Europe, is basically to have the same standards. So that's why you have IFRS accounting standards that have been developed. And the Sustainability Board decided to do the same, but for the sustainability performance of a company. So they issued two standards, one about more general sustainability risk and one about climate change.
Right. So let's look at that. So IFRS S1 and S2, they differ from other sustainability standards, is that right?
Yes, the key focus, the key audience, if you want, for IFRS S1 and S2, it's investors. So it's really about the financial performance of a company and how different type of risk, climate risk, sustainability risk, and so on, may affect ultimately the cash flow of the company, the financial position of a company. Other standards, for example, will consider how a company impacts its environment, the economy, the society, and so on. That's what we call double materiality. But here, from the IFRS S1 and S2 perspective, it's really about the financial impact of these different type of risk.
Right. Well, IFRS S1 refers to sustainability-related risks and opportunities. What are those risks and opportunities?
So it's very broad, actually. Climate change is one of these sustainability risks, but you can think more broadly about, for example, your dependence on water, biodiversity, and so on. So it's really the idea that a business is part of an ecosystem, and to create value, you need to rely on your ecosystem. And that's why you want to understand a bit more the risk and opportunities that exist within that ecosystem, and ultimately try to quantify from a financial point of view what are those risks.
Right. Well, what about IFRS S2, climate-related financial information?
So this one is really more specific. We're talking about climate risk and how climate risk may affect a company. So let's take a few examples. If you're a company with a facility close to the seaside, on the coast, you know that with climate change, sea level will rise. And so ultimately, maybe your facility will end up being destroyed, or even your insurance company won't insure your facility anymore because it's just too risky. So that's one risk that have a financial impact on your company. If you want to look at opportunities, for example, if you're a company selling air conditioning units, you know that temperatures are getting warmer, so you may actually be able to sell more of those air conditioning units.
Now, let's say I have a company and it's already relied on the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, or TCFD framework, to report its carbon emission. Do I then need to start over again?
No, actually, IFRS S2 is really building upon TCFD framework. So they really look at the same structure, 4 pillars: governance, strategy, risk management, metrics, and targets. And so the International Sustainability Standard Board issued a comparison between TCFD and IFRS S2, and actually you don't have so many changes to make. So you're really in a very good position, I would say.
Right. Now, who does this apply to? Is it all companies around the world?
No, because actually this Sustainability Standard Board is only a standard setter. So they produce standard. Then it's up to each country to decide on whether they want to endorse and enforce the standard or not. So a few countries like the UK, for example, they already plan to enforce IFRS S1 and S2. Other countries, I guess, will also consider it.
Mm-hmm. What about Australia?
Australia, actually, there is a proposal from the Australian Treasury to make climate-related disclosure mandatory for quite a number of companies. So we're talking about starting from first for companies with 1 billion turnover, but progressively over 3 years, we're talking about companies with 50 million turnover. So just to keep it simple. So quite many companies potentially will be affected and will have to produce such a reporting. And the standard setter, the Australian Accounting Standard Board, the ISSB, has been tasked with developing the standard for Australia. And the way they're doing it so far, they're thinking to closely align the standard with IFRS S2. And they won't focus now on sustainability risk. They want to narrow it down to climate risk first. So S1 will be quite significantly changed just to keep, ultimately, climate risk.
Right. So there's not a requirement for smaller companies, but it might be in their best interest to adhere to these kinds of rules.
Yes, to do it voluntarily, I would say, especially because you will get market pressures. For example, if one of your large customers is, for example, Coles or Woolies, or any large corporation, basically they have requirements to report on their carbon emission and also on the carbon emission of their suppliers. So they may come to you as a small company and ask for your, carbon footprint. So it's good to proactively make sure that you're able to disclose this type of information. Otherwise, maybe you could end up being priced out of the market if you don't do that.
Well, there's a lot to think about for companies, but I suppose in conclusion, what are the main points?
I would say first, there is a bit of a compliance exercise when you're reporting on your carbon emission, but I think it's also a very good opportunity to reflect more broadly about your strategy. How do you want to position your business over the long term? So you really get the most value of this exercise if you really, do it proactively and really take time to reflect on, what will be your carbon trajectory. How would you change your business strategy to keep it running for the long time? So that's one key aspect. The second one is potentially around greenwashing. So there's been a lot of debate about companies making claims that they are, green companies, very sustainable and so on. Now there is much more pressure about making sure that your communication is not biased and not misleading. So you need to have credible data, you need to have credible action plans, and more, you will get investors, customers asking you about making sure that you're turning your words into actions.
Damien Lambert, Mazars.